Good afternoon. I'm really glad to see still so many people on site, despite of those turbulent times. To see new and old faces. Very good to have you here. And now I'm really glad to welcome on that stage my three panelists. And first, please give a hand to Terhi Vapola from Helen Ventures. She's a founder and a VP of Helen Ventures, and Helen Ventures is mostly about energy field startups. She has a background in entrepreneurship and in investments. But you love sailing, but you didn't take a sailing boat from Helsinki to Tallinn today.
Unfortunately not, but I saw somebody else doing that on the way. So I was looking at, wow, that looks great. I should have done that.
So next time you'll take a sailing boat also. So please take a seat. Then our next panelist will be Gerri Kodres from United Angels VC. Gerri is a founding partner, and when I asked something to characterize him, then he said that actually he loves really open water swimming, and he gave me a promise. So now you are all the witnesses of that, keeping that promise. And that promise was to...
I was actually planning to swim from Saaremaa to Hiiumaa, weather allowing. So that's kind of weather allowing this year, otherwise next year.
Okay, so that's a promise from Gerri, and you are witnessing it. He will swim from Saaremaa to Hiiumaa. Very good. Take a seat. And then the third panelist is Kristjan Laanemaa from Karma VC. And Kristjan is an endurance man.
Yeah. So.
As he loves endurance sports, and he has been an endurance man also in VC, started prior to the previous crisis. So, what are the sports you do?
I do road cycling and running, and this requires endurance. And past 12 years in venture has also seen good times and bad times, and there are many similarities.
Okay, so these are our panelists today, and let's kick it off. And definitely, I'm so glad to have you here, despite of that crisis, or just because of that crisis, because today's topic that we are going to discuss about is crisis as a routine for VCs and startups. So it goes. We'll talk specifically about the VC angle, a bit of the times before the crisis, if you still remember those, then about the impact and the effects of the crisis, and then definitely what to learn about those. There will be a reverse pitch later, today or tomorrow, so you will be also on the stage probably doing the reverse pitch, but prior to that, I would still, in order to set the stage, to ask from you, how many startups do you have right now in your current portfolio? And as the second question probably, are you still in an active investment period?
Altogether, putting together my angel and fund portfolio, I have around 35 companies. And yes, we are in the active investment period.
Very good. Thank you, Gerri. Terhi?
Helen Ventures is a new player, so we have 3 in our portfolio, and we are definitely looking for more. So we are here to exactly find those companies.
Very good. Kristjan?
We have 15 companies now in our Karma Ventures 1 portfolio, and still active in the investment period. So this year we will look forward to actually making 2 or 3 more new investments.
Okay, very good. So you know, if you want to impress them, they still have some dry powder to invest. So if we go to the times prior to the crisis, 2019 was a very good year for startups and also for VCs. So we saw the new records breaking. In Finland, I believe that was the first time that more than $500 million has been invested into startups by both VCs and business angels. And in Estonia, the last year was not the record year of the volume of the investment, but definitely by the number of the investments. So that over 300 million euros invested within 76 transactions. And definitely Latvia and Lithuania are catching up there as well. And now you are representing Finland or Nordic area, Baltic or New Nordic, and Karma VC as probably the investor of choice for all the startups in Europe.
Yeah, we have a mandate for whole EU.
How do you feel right now? Is that Nordic, Baltic or New Nordic region booming with startups and VCs? Has it become already too competitive, taking into account that all that new money that has poured into the new funds that have been established within the couple of last years are eager to find the best teams to invest into? So what's your feeling? Is there a boom, and whether it has become even too competitive? Let's start from Gerri.
Yes, I think definitely the ecosystem in the region is seeing one of the best times ever. And what is really glad is that what's really good to see is that we only do not have the record level of investments available for the region, but also actually record number of startups where to invest to. And in my view, it's really what has started to work for the new Nordic ecosystem is a kind of a virtuous circle that when I was active angel investor like 10 to 3 years back, then actually there were very few teams with like established backgrounds of and having a good experience from already existing star companies. Then at some point there were many people coming with a Skype background, but now we see that actually there is, especially in Estonia, there is increasing number of people coming out, increasing number of founders coming out from the second wave of successful startups like TransferWise, Pipedrive, Bolt, and I think the increased competitiveness also shows that actually there is enough quality in the teams that are available for investing, and that's really a virtuous circle that has started to work, and this is actually, as an investor, it's really good to see it. And competitiveness definitely also has moved to an earlier phase. So that's also, if I again think maybe 6, 5, 7 years ago, then all the early phase investments, almost all the early phase investments were done by local investors only here, a handful of local angel investors. But now, already in early phase, we actually see the Finnish funds coming to Estonia, we see the German, we see UK funds investing here, and also I think this is a testimonial that the quality of the ecosystem in the region as a whole and in Estonia also specifically has risen considerably.
Okay, very good. Very often we see that there are a lot of IT applications related businesses and new ventures, and not so many also the investors that are interested in other areas. So Terhi, what do you say from your different field of investment focus? Is it still already like competitive? Is it booming? Or whether you see that in energy, in sustainability, it is still like up to grow?
For the sector focus, so first of all, we look at the whole of Europe plus Israel. So we want to make sure that we get the very best deals and not limit it too much. So that's one thing. But at the same time, I do believe exactly what you just described. So looking at the boom of the ecosystem, which is working on the positive cycle, so that we have more companies and especially in the energy field. So if you think about the big things in the world, the climate change, looking at the issues about the clean energy and the digital, which is underlying change and force of change in the energy field, we see a lot of opportunities in this sector, which are very ripe for innovation and ripe for startups to make a difference. So that's really great. And then from the investor side, I do believe that it's important to have your focus so that you can add value and you differentiate. So that's why I do see that we have more of going from the generalist perspective, going more into like newcomers have very specific perspective what they are bringing into the market.
Okay, very good. And Kristjan, definitely as a founding partner and investor in Karma VC, you have felt that competitive environment in whole Europe for a long time already. So should the VC investors have a sort of a better value proposition for the startups?
I think that different fund strategies are different. Otherwise, they cannot raise actually from their LPs, because if you go with the same proposition to the LPs just want to invest in your fund. So they have to differentiate on the strategy level. And how I see like this region's ecosystem, I think that definitely you see more competing offers on deals. But so far we have not felt that, hey, it's like too much, we don't think that it's possible to operate here, because there are so many different business models, so many different types of even people's personalities. Because, I don't know, Gerri might actually match really well with one type of founder, I might match really well with another type of founder. So I think so far we've all found like our opportunities and our space where to operate. So.
Okay, that's good to learn about. And don't forget, if you have any questions to those investors or related to that field, just pose your question in Slido, and definitely Tim will help you to speak it out if you don't want to write it down. So just raise a hand if you have a question or pose it in Slido, and we try to cover those questions also, not only those that I have in my mind, because I can be talkative. I hope that you can also. So, coming to the crisis, as that is the most topic of our today's discussion, did the COVID-19 crisis hit your portfolio companies? And if it did, then how?
I think overall the IT and tech segment is lucky. If you read news, if you follow other segments, which really suffer heavily from all the movement restrictions and all travel restrictions, then IT segment actually is one of the few ones that overall benefits from it. So it would be, not really good to complain too much about this. And overall, the impact, I think, is for our portfolio, it's quite the same as for almost every investor, that there are some companies actually that flourish because of this, because they provide some kind of service that suddenly has become very attractive. There are some companies that had to adapt and then are growing very well, and then there are some which are still, which are below the pre-COVID levels. The ones which maybe rely somewhat on the physical movement of people, or the ones which maybe have not adopted so well.
So no significant impact by the specific COVID crisis?
Yes, there are some companies. We have, for example, 2 companies which are in the travel segment, and they were hit. Their revenue levels came down. But on the other hand, they also started to innovate. For example, one company now is focusing much more on providing contactless access providing it to hotels. Before that, it was basically a company that provided a feedback system to the hotels. Right now, it has refocused, and it's doing quite fine again. So,
I know that company. We are co-investors in that company.
Yes.
So, Kristjan, what about your portfolio? So you have a much larger portfolio by today. So definitely those companies that are in leisure or travel or entertainment have been somehow hit, at least the traditional companies. What about the startups?
Yeah, we have also similar picture. One company is adjacent to travel sector, and they felt the impact of revenue decline pretty drastically. I think the other segment where I saw that revenue levels dropped off were companies that brought into the market complex, like really innovative technology, which is not widespread yet. And so everybody said that, okay, now it's a bit uncertain times, let's wait and we can, implement this fun new technology a bit later. So that was another type of company that got impacted. But similarly to what Gerri said, the portfolio overall, the impact was pretty neutral, because then we had 2 or 3 companies that actually benefited big time from it, and the portfolio was actually in really good health in the end.
Okay, that's very good to hear. Terhi, what about your portfolio companies? Did any of those got a hit?
Both ways. So there has been, of course, impact on the delays. So looking at some things which were supposed to happen earlier and they're happening later, or they get delayed, whether it is on the customer front or in the investment front. But then on the other hand, if you look at the digital energy sector, that's one of the sectors where actually you see the benefits of this. So looking at all the injection of the new investments coming into the field, so there are also opportunities which are speeding up the development, for example, the electric charging and this kind of things, which are actually, you could say that surprisingly growing fast given the situation.
Okay, so there is the first question. Very good. And the very first question, I'll take it right now. Actually, I had a poll for you, but I'll take the first Slido question first. Have you seen any interesting and potentially impactful directly COVID-19 related startups just within that period? So we have been talking about your current portfolios. None of them are probably directly related to COVID-19, or Terhi?
Maybe I can say from my past experience, so the investments I've done before into the health tech, very positive, because a lot of investment and a lot of attention to diagnostics and testing and this kind of thing. So you do see a direct impact, which is accelerating things much faster than before.
Okay, very good. Before we come to the new investments, or how the COVID crisis has impacted your current investment processes, I have a question to the audience. To carry out the very small on-site poll. So first, please raise a hand who is a startup-related person. Oh, very nice. Who is an investor? A couple of. Oh, very good. So, think of your startup companies in your portfolio if you are not a startup-related person by yourself, or if you are a potential startupper or founder, think about those. I have a very small poll. One question, 4 possible options. Just raise a hand. The question is that how the COVID crisis has impacted your company. The first option is, my company is in a stealth mode. Please raise a hand. Very good. No stealth mode companies. Second option is, I had to postpone my fundraising because of COVID. Please raise a hand. A couple of, but not too bad. So, third option is, I got a lot of more money during the crisis than I expected. Please raise a hand. Oh, lovely. That is good. Absolutely good. Some of you have got significantly more money. And the fourth option is, I discovered new business opportunities throughout the COVID crisis. Please raise a hand. I love that. So, very good. What the rest were doing? Okay, very good. So there are definitely new opportunities in the crisis. Let's go to the current situation. As I learned from the previous one that as your startup companies were not so much in trouble, you basically had the situation under the control and you didn't have to bother too much in a different way as you expected or as you are supporting your startup portfolio companies anyway. Okay, that's good to learn. A good point. Then let's take the current situation. How is the COVID crisis affecting the negotiations process or making new investments? You mentioned already that there are actually a lot of interesting opportunities. I'm really glad to see that there are also some new opportunities that have been discovered by the startuppers. So, what is going on right now? Let's start with Kristjan this time. So, what happened to deals and negotiations that were in progress when COVID hit?
So first thing that we saw, and I don't know if it's like accidental or not, but Q2, by the number of deals that we saw, was the highest since we started Karma. So many new things came in. What happened to the existing negotiations? We actually continued the same way as we were operating in February or beginning of March. We continued with same deals. We concluded one new investment just a few weeks ago, and actually also interestingly, like Q2 was the most active one from our side when it comes to handing out new term sheets. So this means that we gave like a number of term sheets, but we didn't win them all. A couple of them are in process now. One we actually closed, but then we saw competition as well. In some we didn't get the deal.
Okay.
But, so it was super active, actually, surprisingly.
Surprisingly super active. Gerri?
Actually, confirming to Kristjan's experience also, if you look at the overall statistics, at least about Estonia, then the number of deals actually was the same.
Super active.
The number of deals it's even actually, I think, higher compared to the last year, because there is bigger number of unannounced deals. Because a number of companies actually have got breaches from the existing investors, a lot of which go unannounced. So from that regard, but there is also surprisingly many new investments. And yeah, we have the same feeling that and I think this shows quite well the differentiation right now between maybe the tech sector and other segments, that the outstanding opportunities in our segments are still there. And everybody is looking to find them, and yeah, we see that right now it's almost as business as usual as it used to be, and you see the same from the general statistics.
Good news. So as said exactly, the general statistics, at least for Estonia, confirms that there have been several good teams able to successfully fundraise, and with a very fast pace, actually. That's surprising, so that it's like business as even, not usual, but even better than usual. So, Terhi, what about Finland and your sectors?
I think that if I think about from the personal experience perspective, one of the biggest issues was related to not being able to meet the founders. So having my background in dozens and dozens of deals, I've always looked at the eye and, is this a team? Do I trust these guys? You need to get the first-hand experience. And I thought that that's a mandatory thing. So you can't do anything. You must meet the team. But actually now I've done my first deal. We've done the deal without actually even ever meeting in person.
Okay.
And I thought that's impossible. But then in the springtime, you didn't know how long this will last. So you started the process, you went along, and you assumed that eventually you'll get to meet these guys. And then it just keeps on getting longer and longer. And then you just need to find the new means. And maybe the other thing which actually is positive for us is that the world is getting smaller. So this team is in the Netherlands, and from Finland to Netherlands, the world is as close as from Helsinki to Espoo, because you are still behind the same screens there. So actually, it makes the world smaller.
So basically, it seems that crisis has developed the new normality. So we are living in the new normal, and startups and VC investors are very used to adopt to that new normal. So Kristjan, you had a comment.
Yeah, one area that we thought would actually collapse was exit markets and interest from strategics, because they usually pull back when there's like tough times. But even, now we've seen that also corporate world has actually adjusted, and the M&A teams are still really active. So we closed our first exit deal recently, and we've seen also for other portfolio companies that strategics are still actively approaching tech companies, trying to find like these innovative technologies that would boost their competitive situation. So.
Okay, very good. So we got a question from Tanya, and Tanya is interested in that whether there is a pandemic investment craze, so that whether there are exceptionally a lot VCs that are somehow trying to get into the COVID-related or COVID-solving startups, and whether it's long-lasting. Have you seen in your inflow or deal flow coming in the companies that are specifically COVID solving? So, and what's your opinion about those?
Very few.
I can comment as well that I wouldn't invest to specifically COVID solving startup. Okay, maybe if it's only specifically for this, it would need to be some pharmaceutical company, which is not maybe our strong point here. But of course, I think maybe what the question is more about is that the ones that get some kind of boost from this situation, and a lot of the terms most likely that now have arisen as a result of this crisis are it looks to be will stay around. Everything related to increase in the remote work and e-commerce and a lot of other solutions which I wouldn't say are not COVID specific. COVID is accelerating the trends which were already there.
Okay.
So definitely, and that's part of investors' job actually to look at these companies that are benefiting from some kind of a general trend, some kind of mid and long-term trend, not only short-term trend.
Got it. So any other comments on that specific COVID-related startups? No? I have a remark. My friend is an owner of a company called CureVac, and CureVac is one of those companies that is developing the vaccine for COVID-19. And we serve together in the advisory board of European Innovation Council, and they did an IPO 2 weeks ago on Friday on New York Stock Exchange, and the price level they started from was around $16 per share, and it skyrocketed to 85 basically, and slightly declined, but in general stayed there. So it also somehow represents the fear or also the interest of investors just rushing into the things. And also that represented probably the level of the advisors by advising the price level for the IPO. So I was so surprised. It was like significant increase if compared to the starting price point. So as a comment, but coming back, I've got another question regarding the current crisis situation. You as the GPs in your funds, having the communication not only with the startup founders and trying to comfort and support the founders, whether you had any tough times with your investors, with LPs?
We have not had any tough times, and also I haven't heard of any actual LP pulling out in the region. Maybe there are some, but I haven't seen a practical example. There was a period of like panic, I think, which lasted around 1 month in the somewhere end of Q1. But I think after this, everybody saw that the world didn't collapse, and And I think this kind of situation was pretty, short term. Maybe if you, especially during this moment, did a capital call, it theoretically might have happened, and most likely it happened to some funds somewhere. But I haven't heard any actual example from our region.
Any failed capital calls from your LPs? No. Did you have a sort of a very constant and regular reporting about the progress of your portfolio companies during the crisis, so that otherwise you would report like once a month and then you start to report once a week, for example? Kristjan?
We didn't actually increase the reporting cadence, but what we of course did, we ran, let's say, a risk analysis on the portfolio and presented that to LPs.
So
but the results were similar as I described earlier, like the portfolio in general was holding up well, and we kept monitoring, but no special measures taken.
But that risk analysis was a sort of a regular thing that you would have performed anyway, or was it a sort of exceptional
This
thing?
was like one time. We tried to understand like if the COVID impacts the portfolio, how much more money do we need to put into the existing portfolio companies? What's the potential value impact? We did that exercise.
Terhi, from your experience, no special action from the LP side?
We are special from the perspective that we are the investment arm of Helen, the energy company. And of course, we are so close to the organization's strategy as a whole. So thinking of the transformation of the energy sector, that is the CEO top level topic. And then, of course, being so crucial to the strategy is not something which is on the side, and is also at the same time is something which is much longer term. So energy sector maybe is one of those where you have a capability to look further than the 3 months or next year or so, but you are used to planning into the horizon and then stick to the plans as well.
Okay, so got it. Now we have to start to wrap it up. So let's move further from the crisis thing and let's look to the future. What will happen in next 3, 6, 12 months? Whether the current, and I love the question, whoever posed it, how can money printing affect valuations of startups? So it is also what is probably starting to affect or impact the VC and startups valuations. So what do you say? What will happen because or despite of the current COVID crisis in the next year, in the next 12 months? What's your prognosis? So, Kristjan?
Can I answer honestly? I don't know. There are so many.
Is it too foggy?
Sorry?
Is it too foggy yet? So
yeah, there are so many things that impact the outcome. If I try to play out some, this money printing question, for example, this, on one hand, it might be positive because this money starts to look for yields. And that's why this is going to be invested in areas that actually produce yields. And venture in recent years has been a good source. So probably there's money still available. On the other hand, because the uncertainty creates a situation where LPs, themselves don't know what's going to happen. Do they commit actually into new funds? This one is an unknown, and we're going to see it within the next year, I guess. So too foggy, I guess.
Okay, Gerri, what do you think?
We think actually the situation continues to be uncertain. And
that is the new normal.
That is the new normal, and that is why actually we still, although the stock markets are in historical level and the tech sector, public markets is booming, we still see that the startups are in the vulnerable situation. And the moment of truth, to some extent, I think will come when many of them will start raising new rounds after the breach rounds that were done by existing investors in the last 4 to 6 months. And we don't know what's the situation going to be by that time. Most likely this will happen somewhere in the end of this year, Q1 next year. And therefore we advise all our companies actually to still keep the costs relatively conservative. Also actually we advise them to look for alternative financing options For example, that's
Customer money.
Customer money, but also actually there is, in the good times, actually many startups, skip the kind of a grants as a somehow because it was so easy to raise investor money. But right now, if you can have some grant, which actually will help you to extend your runway and get your actual results and get your customer money coming in a much higher rate, that is something that also needs to be taken.
Thank you for pointing that out. Now it's advertising minute. Tomorrow at 11, I will be talking about the European Innovation Council's fund and a lot of money. So come to listen to that. So going back, what is your advice, Terhi, to do the startups for the next 6 to 12 months?
I would go with the same kind of a logic. So I think in these times, you need to adapt to whatever is the consequences. You can't change the environment, especially when you're small, but you need to work on the goal and the mission what you have and find the ways to get there. And the most important North Star is always the real business. So it's the customers who love your product and the capabilities of the good team to make that happen, have the product market fit, go into scaling. So of course, there are things which are not under our control, but you need to. You can't let that let you down, and you can't focus on the issue. You need to focus on what's really important, and I think that's the real business.
Okay, thank you very much, Terhi. And now for the final word, Kristjan, is there anything specific, like 3 things you would say that the startups would focus on as a takeaway of today's discussion?
What I saw also in 2007-8 is that really good startups were started when times were tough, because they started coming when everything was down and it was a way up. So definitely good time to get started if you have the guts. On fund level, I was thinking also like what's important for funds. I think for funds, it's really important to have a really good follow-on policy, so that you spread the investments over the years and you have still follow-on capability for your portfolio. So when times get tough, then you can support it. So these 2 maybe.
And that was the best advice from the endurance man that has survived also the last crisis. Now, let's admit the crisis is the new normality, and it is actually the everyday life of the startups and of the VC investors, because investing into the startups is very often the problem-solving business. So, thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you, Gerri, Terhi, and Kristjan, and we loved to have you. Thank you. And now let's go for a break.